Hi, I'm Sai. Welcome to my channel called Nugget of Wisdom. And I'm really keen to discuss my next topic with you. It's something that really, I wouldn't say it's grating on me, but it's on my mind quite a lot since I set this channel up. And I think it's partially the purpose of this channel to bring these really important issues that I'm going to discuss to the surface. So I want to talk about the war in Ukraine. Because again, I think if I'm going to have a channel that's talking about wisdom and nuggets of wisdom and all that stuff, I think somebody needs to explore the nuggets of wisdom or lack of wisdom that relates to what is going on with this war in Ukraine between Russia and Ukraine. And I think for me as well, I don't want to just do the typical. The typical is, if you go to, say, Western legacy media, BBC, ITV, CNN, or Fox News, they all have a narrative. They all have a reporter or a presenter who's giving their version of events and then questioning people on it. And that's totally understandable. So if you live in the West, chances are that the media organizations there are going to be very pro the sort of Western, European, UK, American version of relative truth about that war. And we see it, you can watch all these mainstream medias and you'll see most of the time it's about the big bad Russia, evil Putin, who's dying of cancer, or who's up to no good, killing off all his enemies, who wants to take over the world, who wants to, attack all the other countries, who's, doing dastardly things in Ukraine. And then there are people that come in, experts, to talk about these narratives. But generally speaking, they come in from a platform that they already have some sort of buy-in to the stories that the mainstream media want to tell us. And I just don't trust them. I don't trust them because for me, media that's totally one-sided, bringing up kind of very moralistic, often I would say hateful arguments against another or another grouping. Fine, maybe these people are evil. Maybe Putin is crazy. Maybe he's evil. Maybe he's trying to take over the world. Who knows? But it doesn't ring true with me when I see this one-sided, constant narrative. And where I've commented on some of these sites, very quickly you can see that a lot of people who comment on these Western media sites are very uncomfortable about what's being said on there and are questioning things. So the comment section on these YouTube videos, where ordinary people are basically coming on, are asking questions. They're not, some of the time they're saying, yeah, it's a great interview, thank you very much, but they're asking questions. They're not buying into everything they're hearing. And then you've got the other side of this, which is the Russian side. Well, I've never been to Russia. I don't know anybody Russian. But my guess is, I would guess if I was, just doing my proper assessment of an analysis of truth, relative truth, I would guess that it's not that dissimilar in Russia. That there will be a sort of, like the West, a propaganda machine that wants to get the people of the country all aligned to support what the military and political leadership is doing in that country. I guess as well as that people will be mindful and careful about expressing their doubts, their concerns, for fear of being cast out of the group. This is the survival instinct. I think less so, I would guess, in the West. But then in the West, people who are, very, very sort of brave enough to step outside the sort of agreed narrative of the Western system Arctic cast as oddballs, conspiracy theorists, tinfoil hatters, nuts. And they're kind of sort of just marginalised. And they rarely get into the mainstream. So the mainstream, what I call the mainstream conventional satellite terrestrial type television, that's still in these countries, has still got a following, especially of the older generation. And the older generation who tend to vote in elections more than the younger generation. What happens is those media organisations will also, if they have to deal with some of these people who are basically out on, say, social media and YouTube expressing a different view, will dismiss them. Or they will bring up the whole, well, you know, the internet's full of crazy conversations and crazy people. And they're not necessarily wrong about that either. The internet is a melting pot. I should say YouTube, really, but you know, social media is a X. You know, these channels where you've got potentially vast numbers of people talking about important political issues around the world. So yeah, you know this. Just go on the internet and find a conspiracy. Make something up, and you'll find there are people out there who have a conspiracy theory. And again, I have got reservations about a lot of the new media I see on YouTube, because they're also very much out to completely destroy the reputation of legacy media. Sometimes it's revenge, because you have presenters and people who are involved with legacy media who got turfed out and started their own, you know, channels and so on. So they got access to grind, but also the new media is the new kid on the block, and they want to get all of the eyeballs. They want all the eyeballs, young and old. They want the numbers. They want the people. They want to have the little sort of YouTube, little sort of whatever you call it, plaque saying I have so many million subscribers. So they're out to decimate and destroy the legacy media. So it doesn't really matter if the legacy media, say BBC, comes along and does a pretty respectful, thoughtful analysis of something. The guys on the internet with their new forms of their blogs and their podcasts and so on ain't going to be too interested in that. So you've got this problem. You've got legacy media, which is, I would say, biased. And why is it biased? It's biased often towards its commercial interests. Commercial interests run Western politics. So large corporations donating money. I've often called it a shamocracy, not a democracy. It's not a people's democracy. That's the truth. What is a people? Where you had, totally based on merit, totally based on that no ability to corrupt the system with with money. So in the sort of shamocracy of the West, the media is very connected to that. Advertising, influence, and so on. And also, you only have to talk to anybody who's analyzes the military strategies in the world, and you've got economic. That's sanctions and running the world when it comes to finance, because that's a really good strategy from a war point of view, because you can try to starve people or impoverish them or destroy their economies, take their jobs away. You've got the media, and the media is all about trying to get people to believe your story. And your story is used as a fuel to get the buy-in from the public to go off and spend tax money, all your income tax, on weaponry and other things. You've got to get that buy-in. You've got to keep the people sort of satisfied of what's happening. You're steering the ship, the warship, in the right direction. So you will use all sorts of propaganda. This is just the nature of human beings. I'm not trying to judge anyone here. And I'm not saying that if I was in their shoes, I wouldn't do the same thing. And then you have, of course, you have military itself, which is kind of, there's two parts to this. That one is to do what countries do, proxy wars. They get somebody else to fight the war. They give them stuff. They hide and they give them weaponry and say, you just go off and free yourselves and here's some weaponry, because they know it would be unpalatable for their own citizens to get involved in a war that would mean loss of life. And of course, whenever it's loss of life in a war, the people start to get anxious. The parents, the mothers, the fathers start to get, my son, my children are in this war. And then you have casualties. And so basically, the war machine will use the proxy system, and lots of countries do it. I mean, probably countries have done it for generations. It's pretty, it's pretty understandable why they do it. They save themselves, they save their own soldiers, and then they poke the bear, and they use other people to engage, and they give them weaponry. Or the final element of this is to just basically go in there, and you can go in there different ways. You can go in there with aircraft and smart bombs and stuff like that, which is a little bit easier than going in there with boots on the ground. And what has tended to happen with the military, the sort of air forces and the people in the skies and the smart weaponry, is that they can't quite do what they want to do. You can press the nuclear button, but that's mutual destruction for everyone. So that's probably one of the greatest peacemakers in the world at the moment, believe it or not. Ironically, is that these weapons are so destructive that it's game over for everyone. And then the last thing you can do is go in there on the ground with soldiers, your own soldiers. And that is a problem in some circumstances, because, for example, like the US, if your population mostly don't even know or care where, say, Ukraine is, to convince them all to go in on the ground, to travel all that distance, get all your logistics and your support in place, it's quite a measure. It's quite a difficult thing to do. So I'm not trying to justify anything here or moralize. I'm very keen to stay out of the morals and out of the justification. I'm just trying to say, look, this is the situation, and we all kind of know it deep down. It's not that different from a school playground, really, is it? So what's different now? Well, what's really interesting is that, so you've got these tools of war, economic and military and, proxy and, all that sort of stuff going on, media. But there's a big change going on. And that change it's just like when the printing press was invented. It's just like when people started communicating with each other through the internet years and years and years ago, in simple ways. But the big change that's going on is the ability for people, anyone, look at me, to just put stuff on the internet, and the possibility that thousands and thousands of people can see it and hear it and watch it. Even 100 people is a lot of people. And it's so easy. And so you've now got this situation where you've gone from very controlled media with controlled organizations, where it's very expensive. It's very expensive to put things out. And broadcast technologies are expensive, and they would have needed government intervention and funding and everything else to get them all into position. You've gone to a system very quickly now where anybody can publish anything. And not only publish words, but videos. And not only videos, but fake videos. So they can do fake stuff, they can spread misinformation, it's incredible, really. And so you're into a world where one of the core elements of a society, which is trust, is being really degraded. Because the conventional media are kind of being, in many ways, unmasked. If you hear something on conventional media and then you go onto a YouTube and you find somebody who's semi-reputable, you'll notice there's a huge difference. And you can see this with, for example, the whole thing that's going on in Palestine. And I did a video previously on that. And whatever side you're on, you can see that the narrative from the Western countries that support America, that support Israel, doesn't stack up anymore. It just doesn't stack up. When you look at what's actually happening and just getting information and evidence from reputable organizations and independent media organizations, they're completely out of sync. And what that's doing is completely degrading trust and respect for the political system, for politicians, for leaders, for the conventional, old-fashioned legacy media. At the same time, it's driving loads of propaganda, loads of misinformation, because for every one good reporter on the internet, there's going to be a whole pile of people who are just totally biased. And you'll see it. I mean, type in, a search on somebody like, I don't know, Putin or Netanyahu or Gaza, and you'll see the same sort of thing going on that has happened in legacy media, which is a sort of a news media with conventional looking sort of setup, just pushing one narrative. Just pushing one narrative. Those guys are wrong, these guys are right. And then sometimes it's quite vicious. I mean, personalized, almost hateful towards individuals. And of course, what that does is it allows these people to start building up eyeballs. So there's an obsession with, subscribers and views. People reach 1 million subscribers, they're clapping their hands and going, I reached, thank you so much. And the more extreme you are, and the more polarizing you are, the more people are going to latch onto you, because they're mirroring, they're reflecting. They want to believe in what's already within them. I am right, they're wrong. Let's find these people who agree with me. And then they're watching these reports and everything else. And a lot of the time, both legacy and internet, the smart trick is to say, you, the public out there, are all the good people. And these people over here are the bad people. And we're going to tell you all about the bad people. And what happens is, we sit here thinking, oh, I'm a really great guy, and I'm a loving guy, and I'm caring, and I love everybody, and I know right from wrong, and I've got great morals. And I'll listen to this, and it will feed me. It'll feed this energy, so I can confirm how wonderful and kind and everything I'm doing is correct, and what a great guy I am. But it's all BS. You're being tricked in many ways. What's happening is these organizations are tapping into your ego. Because when you listen to news, in many ways, you should be able to feel, oh, gosh, I didn't realize that. I thought that was true, but I was wrong. Oh, it's really interesting listening to both sides of the argument. I didn't understand person A. Now I understand him a bit better. I think person B has a point here, but actually person A also has a point. Neither of them are evil. And you start to learn and grow from this experience. And media organizations can do this. They can have somebody who's doing an interview who doesn't have an agenda to start with. I've decided who's wrong, and I'm going to just bring in the people who agree with me, or I'm going to completely attack my guest because I believe I'm right and he's wrong. You don't have to do that. You can be somebody who brings a guest from 2-3 different perspectives, guests from different perspectives, and then you just ask questions. And you steer the conversation so that people are not abusing each other and it doesn't get boring and all the right questions are asked. You can, fantastically today, you can bring in the public through live questions, asking difficult questions. I watched Lex Friedman and Joe Rogan talking about interviewing Putin. They've got millions of... They're some of the biggest media organizations now in the world. Why don't they? Why don't they interview Putin and Biden? together. And then I get the public from Ukraine, Russia, UK to field questions. We see things in a very complicated and difficult sort of way. Oh, the world's problems are so difficult. What are we going? No, they're not. The world's problems are simple to solve. If we can transcend the BS, if we can grow and say, hold on a second here, we don't need to second guess or make arguments up about world leaders. They can just talk to each other. There's nothing stopping all of the world leaders from talking to each other with just a click of a button in a few seconds. Face to face. What's stopping them? I'm doing it here from a motorhome, but very little. It's costing me nothing to do it. And what's stopping these world leaders from talking to each other and then letting the public just watch? They're living in dinosaur world. They're still caught up in this idea that they can act in ways that were okay in the old world of a few major TV channels, going out there and saying something like, oh, we're trying to fight evil in the world. He's evil, I'm good. The problem is, most people don't believe it. I know you don't believe it. You wouldn't believe it if you were buying something from a garage, a car from a garage. You'd want to see evidence and proof of the car's service history and everything else. In our lives, we know when we look at these people that they're being disingenuous. And what's worse is you can also now, if you want to, just look at videos from different senior people in government and you know the secretaries of state in the US and the sort of officer class, civil servant type class. And you see all sorts of contradictions going on where they're changing the narrative depending on what's going on. And the most obvious thing is the current two major conflicts that are going on in the world, where you have all these moralistic propaganda type narratives coming out about the rights and wrongs of what's going on in one country and another. But then what you see is that all the players are just playing you. They're just playing you. And so we're in unusual times because as technology changes and the AI thing gets going, we may find our window of actually having any kind of relative truth that we can actually fathom for ourselves, and we can assess and analyze, closes down. Because it'll become very easy to fill the internet with complete and utter lies. Video lies, false articles, and it's even happening now. People are already making up stories and videos of things that are going on in places that are not going on at all, or they happened there a long time ago. So all of this is really dangerous, because if you get to a point where there is no trust, no truth, well, before you know it, we have a nuclear war. Because nobody's really got a handle on anything. Everybody's distracted. We're living in this world where it's all about survival mode, not thrive mode. We're stuck in this sort of cage of old-fashioned thinking. The public are disillusioned and have no interest, and they're so consumerized. They're just thinking about what they need to do today to get by, to pay their bills, to have the pleasures of life, to consume. And then you have this whole situation where if they go somewhere to get information, it's like, who's telling the truth and who's telling lies? But what's worse is, just like me and everybody else, we will go to things that satisfy us, that make us feel better. So yeah, that's true because I believe that. Very dangerous situation. And there isn't really a recognition of this anywhere. All these amazing people who are running podcasts with millions of subscribers, they're totally engrossed in their own egos. And why wouldn't they be? I mean, it's an incredible thing to be just one guy, one woman sitting in front of a screen and having millions of people just listening to you. It's the most wonderful thing for the ego to experience. And so, what about me then? Where do I get my truth from? After all of that, how do I fix on some relative truth? Well, I'm going to give you a little example with the Ukraine thing. So I've looked at all the media organizations everywhere. I've just told you some of the things that make me suspicious. The one-sided views, the contradictions, understanding where these media organizations are coming from. They're national, they're funded by organizations, they've got an axe to grind, they've got their corporations doing advertising. They happen to be from one country that's got its own view because it's protecting its national interests. Wiping all that away, and then looking at the conspiracy theorists and the people on the internet who basically are coming up with all sorts of, crazy, angry, we're against the system and we're exposing all these people who are doing terrible things. Put all that to one side. Just put it to one side and say, look, I want to get an idea of where truth is here. And I'll tell you that with the Ukraine situation, it's very difficult. Misinformation flying left, right, and centre, with implications for nuclear war for the world, which is pretty astonishing. And again, everybody knows it. Major powers like Russia or China, America, if they end up having a nuclear confrontation, it's millions of people's lives lost. All out of this madness that we're in at the moment, complete madness. So when you pull it all away, just as an example on the Ukraine-Russia conflict, there are some people, and there are lots of people, but there are some people in particular that I have a lot of respect for when it comes to my faith and respect for their integrity when it comes to any kind of analysis. I'm not saying they're right all the time, but they are genuine and they wish to express a view that informs us and gives us some idea of what's really going on. And what you'll notice with these people in general is they don't demonize one side or the other. They tend to be very often intellectual, very practical, very analytical. And I also like it when these people are from the places where it is not typical that they would have those views. So, say, for example, an American that was a decorated war hero expressing his discomfort about what's going on with the wars that America's involved in. It's easy to hear a Russian saying bad things about America, America saying bad things about Russian, or a Ukrainian. So the guys that really I find really interesting, one of them is called Jeffrey Sachs. I'll put links on the video. An academic, very interesting guy, gives his perspectives on the conflicts that are going on today in the world. Another really fascinating guy is John Mearsheimer. Another highly intellectual and analytical, very factual guy who's able to articulate his perspective on what's going on, and it resonates. And when I look at all the other things, all the other pieces They come back often. His framing around all these bits of evidence, I go, yes, I can see that. And he's not trying to demonize anybody. In fact, these guys express a keenness to bring everybody together, to calm things down, to say, look, guys, this is silly what we're doing here. We could do this a different way. Others, Oliver Stone, the movie director. I don't agree with everything Oliver Stone says, but I sense a genuineness in him to get out there and say what needs to be said, and honour, and a bravery. You can imagine in the US doing what he's doing. He created 2 documentaries, which I'll link, about Ukraine before the war. And he sat down and he spoke to Putin, and he spoke to all the people involved in all these events that occurred around the fall of the government in Ukraine and the CIA's involvement. It's very well done. And you can compare it to a Netflix documentary that was done about Ukraine. So you can look at other perspectives from different places. But what's interesting me about him is that he's bringing these issues up. He's doing it in a very sort of articulate, evidence sort of way. He's not trying to demonize anybody. And I think voices like the voices of these guys, what we need to do is take their perspectives, their views, their documentaries and so on, and then get people to talk to them and question them. He brings up some shocking things about the American political system, about what's been going on in Ukraine, about the CIA. Perhaps they're completely false. But wouldn't it be great if we could see, Joe Rogan or something like that, have a CIA guy, Oliver Stone, watch the documentary and then go through it and say, okay, is this true or false? Where's the evidence for it? I'm sure Oliver Stone would love to be challenged. And challenge would be good for everybody. Because we can then say, okay, hold on. If what this guy is saying is true, we've got serious problems here. The public are involved in wars that are suspect. And that's not happening either. These documentaries go onto YouTube and people watch them, but basically they're almost hidden. Colonel Douglas Macgregor, here's another interesting character. So he's a military guy, decorated senior military guy in the US. Again, an interesting guy. I don't agree with everything he says, but also I don't know. He has a perspective about what's going on that I can look at him and say he seems like a wise guy. He seems to know what he's talking about. But then I can see from other places, listen to Mearsheimer or to Sachs or others, and I can see patterns developing where I'm going, of course, I can see that there's a synergy here. There's a resonance here. But he also doesn't spend his time trying to trash anyone. He's just trying to say, look, logistically, this makes sense or it doesn't make sense. And there are lots of others out there. And they're usually people who I feel are more independent. They don't really have any particular funding from anybody. They're not part of any political grouping. They're putting themselves out on a limb by going against the sort of narrative within their own country. They're open to being challenged. They're open to being questioned. And I think they have a humanity about them. They're trying to sort of say, hold on, everybody. If we did this, it would work better. Then what they're not trying to do is go, get rid of those people because they are wrong. They're not doing that. We are exposing these nasty people who are doing things behind our backs. They're not doing that. And so if we're to if we're to live in a world where we all can get on, all of this stuff relating to demonizing the Chinese, demonizing particular political classes and organizations around the world, demonizing the Russians, demonizing, the Israelis or the Gazans, all this stuff, this moralistic stuff, in a way has to stop. None of these events, none of these wars just happen all of a sudden. There's a whole lot of stuff going on in the background for years, probably decades. Like water boiling. Water, it'll boil over in a second. But there's a whole lot of stuff going on leading to that water boiling to a point where it boils over. And so I'll put these links on, and then you can inform yourself about what you think of those. Comment in the comment section as well. What you think of them. And hopefully this video has given you a little bit of an insight into how I am navigating these big issues. I would say I've got serious concerns about what's happening in both Gaza and in Ukraine. And I have very little confidence in the narratives as a Westerner that I'm hearing from the Western political people. And that's a really big problem. And it also leads to another dimension, which is that what they say, better the devil you know than the devil you don't. If people lose confidence in their political systems, if they don't trust them, if they can clearly see from other places that there's something isn't right, if they start believing the propagandists and the conspiracy theorists, you're going to end up completely destabilizing whatever kind of shamocracy you had. And you'll end up with people getting to power who are totally unpredictable, because you get a backlash. Once people realize they're being fooled, they're being tricked, they're being used, the backlash is they go, right, I'm going to vote for him or her. And often these people are conventionally extreme in their views. It's probably one of the elements that led to Hitler. A downtrodden people, smart, intellectual, decent people in Germany who are beaten down after the First World War, and along comes this guy who's able to rouse them up, an extremist, extreme views. And suddenly everybody's following this guy. And that's the big danger you have in a world where trust is eroded, where we're feeling like we're not being told the truth. People will just rubberneck to those others who potentially have got really extreme ways of behaving. And you can see it without me even mentioning it. Look around the world and see what's happening with the political system and the kinds of people who are getting elected into positions. And that's one of the big tragedies. Because Europe and America and the UK should be the wise, stable, trustworthy countries who are looking out for the greater good of the world, economically, spiritually, that they can sort of, express to everybody that they've learnt from all those years of wars and, upheavals, that they're countries that have had diverse populations from all over the world, and that they can go out there and they can be moderate and they can be respectful and they can be articulate and empathic. And clearly, every time these countries band together, especially Western countries, into these conflicts, the opposite is happening. People are becoming more distant, more disillusioned, more distrustful. And that's a major problem, because somebody will fill the void. some country, some organization, some movement will fill that void. And it doesn't mean that that void gets filled by angels. You know, all of those people on the internet who are desperately banging on about Western institutions and the European Union and the World Economic Forum and Davos and all that. Yeah, I hear you. I'm very mistrustful sometimes of what's going on with these organizations, economic corporate entities, unelected people. But who fills the void? Who's going to fill the void? When you've got rid of all these people, when you've had your revolution, who fills the void? And you've got to be very careful that the void doesn't get filled by somebody who just in different ways isn't an antidote, but is actually worse than the people you've actually overthrown and got rid of. And you can see those struggles going on in the world today. So that's just my viewpoint on all of this. I hope it's been useful. I hope it helps you to sort of think about how you can get some sort of high-scoring relative truth in what you read and see. I will start to put lots of links on to articles relating to people I think who speak a better, higher value of relative truth, which is useful when you're scanning the internet for information and advice about the big events in the world that could have a catastrophic effect on your life. Thank you for listening. See you in my next video.